What up though, y'all? It's Chris. You see the married couple behind me pulling off? They're on their way to their happy life, happily ever after. No, for real though, congratulations to them. I like seeing people get married. You know, I know there's a lot of talk about don't get married, you shouldn't get married, all this sort of stuff. No, I don't agree with that. I think that marriage is still a great thing, and that you simply need to vet better. Marriage can be a terrible thing if you not marrying a good quality woman, one that's not wife material. But just because, you know, you used to dating chicks for the streets that are not wifey material, that does not mean that marriage itself is a bad thing. That just means, my brother, you need to pick better, that's all. But let's talk about buyer's remorse. And it's funny because somebody can get married and regret that, and that can also apply to buyer's remorse. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about buyer's remorse when it comes to buying things and later regretting it. You know, this usually applies to big ticket items. You know, you bought some sports car, some super car, if you can afford one, and you ultimately was like, I shouldn't have got this. It could be some jewelry you bought, you know, some expensive watch or something. You know, it can also be smaller things too. You could go to a restaurant and the food was trash, and now you are having buyer's remorse because the restaurant was an expensive restaurant. You took a date there, the restaurant sucked. You've paid for the bill on that trash food costing you hundreds of bucks, and you are experiencing buyer's remorse. So there's different levels to spending that can trigger buyer's remorse. But there are various different things that also can lead to you feeling like this is a purchase I regret. You know, in a lot of cases, it's impulse buying. You bought something impulsively, you didn't really think it through. You saw it at the mall, you picked it up, and now here it is a few days later, you're looking for that receipt because you're like, I shouldn't have bought this. I really don't like it that much after all. You liked it when you bought it, but now that the high that you experienced from buying it has worn off, you realize this was something that you never should have bought. So it could be that the high just simply wore off and you thought better of it. Another way that you'll experience buyer's remorse is if it's an item that you knew you shouldn't have bought from jump. All right, so you got this thing that you liked it at first, you bought it at impulse, and later on you're like, I shouldn't have got this. But then there's the stuff that you knew you shouldn't have bought it. You bought it when you knew you shouldn't have. You sat there, you said, I don't need this. I'm not gonna get much value out of this. This is very much a dummy purchase. And you completed the purchase anyway. So now you're having buyer's remorse behind it. You know, another example is when the thing was just simply too expensive. This was something you could not afford. You knew you couldn't afford it. You pulled the trigger anyway. And it's really windy here all of a sudden. I don't know. Whenever I walk in Midtown, it feels really windy. Are y'all noticing that? I'm gonna walk this way. I was gonna keep walking down Woodward, but I'm gonna turn off and walk down Kirby because maybe some of this wind will get picked up. And it feels like it has. The building here has picked up the wind. So we'll go ahead and we'll walk this way as I work. This is some purchase that it was too expensive. You really couldn't afford it. You completed it anyway. Now you're experiencing buyer's remorse behind it. You know, there's probably a few more examples I can give, but you guys get the gist of it. You know, all of these lead back to a lack of discipline when it comes to handling your money. You know, if you purchase something and you have remorse afterwards, this is something that you never should have bought to begin with. And one way or another, you knew this was a suboptimal decision and you went through with it anyway. It's catching up to you after the purchase has been completed. That's why you have the remorse. Reality sinks in and has a way of sobering us after we do something that we're not supposed to. So you were at the mall, you saw said thing, you were out of town, you saw said thing. Sun's coming out behind me now, so putting the camera over here to deal with that glare. Spending money that you weren't supposed to spend or really shouldn't have spent, it really does have a way of sobering us up when reality kicks in, when the high from buying it, lets off. So you have to train yourself to stop doing this. If you've been doing this basically like over and over, you've done this a few different times, you keep experiencing it, why do you keep doing it? Exercise some discipline. Nothing should be able to instill discipline in you quite like being broke. All right. And that's another example I can give. You bought something with your last and now you're broke. That's a great example that I can give. You bought something with your last money. You saw this thing was $59.99 and you got $65 in your account. You got just enough money to cover the purchase and tax, and now you bought it. You're back at home. You want something else. You want something to eat. And you look at that bank account, you reminded that you blew your last on whatever that $59.99 item was. It might have been a video game. So you stuck with it now because, once you open a game, you can't return it. I know that well. I worked at GameStop for a number of years. So buyer's remorse essentially boils down to you spending money on things that you shouldn't have. You one way or another were aware that this is a purchase you shouldn't be completing, and you went through with it anyway. You went through with it at the time, even though it wasn't a good choice and you knew it wasn't a good choice. Euphoria, the dopamine that you were experiencing in the moment allowed you to not think about what a bad purchase this was. But once that dopamine wore off, you're smack dab in the middle of regret because what you knew all along comes back hitting you like a bus. I should not have bought this. I never should have bought this. So don't spend money on things that you can't afford. Don't spend money on things when it's your last money. Don't go buying things, as an impulse. Definitely don't buy things on an impulse. Listen, the way you get impulses under control, impulse purchases, is step back. Don't get it right then. Leave, think on it for a few days. And if you still want it after a few days, then, maybe revisit the idea of going to get it. But in many cases, and this is with me, for sure, this has happened to me. In many cases, I don't even want it anymore. I don't want to go back to the mall to get it. I don't feel like it. I realized that this was a purchase I really didn't need. And I was just in the moment wanting it. And if I did really want it, I'd be more than willing to go through the trouble of getting back to the mall to get it. But it's not that serious. Stay away from these impulse buys. I'm telling you. Stay away from impulse buys. Stop buying stuff that you can't afford to do with cash, because that's another thing that will have you doing buyer's remorse. Buying something and it put you in debt. So you're buying something. The scenario I used before was the $59.99. That's with your debit card, okay? We talking about with your credit card now. You don't even have the cash to purchases. You want to buy a TV. The TV's like $800. You've got $100 cash in your bank account. So you're gonna throw it on your credit card. Your credit card's got $1,000 limit, and you're gonna throw that $800 TV on your $1,000 limit credit card. That's gonna give you some buyer's remorse too, because you are nearly against the wall now. And if you can only afford to make the minimum payments, you about to get taxed. So these sorts of things, they humble you. You know, they get you to thinking this was a bad decision. I have buyer's remorse over this. And as I said, it's usually tied to you already knowing that this was a suboptimal decision, but your desire for it in the moment outweighed your sensible thinking. You know, so just be mindful of this. You know, if these things that I'm saying sound like you already know these things are you if they sound like you. And but you know, maybe hearing them coming from somebody else can kind of help, because sometimes we do stuff and we know it's the wrong thing to do, but hearing it from somebody else telling us that this is a bad idea, this is a poor decision, it kind of hits harder. So for those that need to hear it, I really hope this is hitting for you, because I may right now, I'm hoping that right now somebody who this video is reaching was about to make a poor decision. They were going to buy something that they shouldn't, that they did not need. We're going to get limited value out of it. It was going to put them in debt, or if they don't have credit cards, to go into debt with credit. They were going to spend their last money, and they were going to be broke till next payday over buying this thing. I hope you now choose not to do it. So I'm leaving it there. Thumbs up this video if you liked it. Send it to somebody that you know, if they can get value out of hearing this, because you might know somebody that needs to hear this. If you're not the person that needs to hear it, you might know somebody who does. And subscribe if you haven't already. About to get back to stepping. Peace.